Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all my Herald Yugioh deck profile for July 2022. For those of you that don't know, the Heralds are a wide variety of Yu-Gi-Oh monsters that focus on being able to negate a bunch of different cards that your opponent use in the playstyle of either discarding other fairy monsters from your hand to the graveyard with the three different hand trap-like Herald monsters, or the different ritual monsters we have. They even have a link monster and also a synchro monster, which we can use for search power for the entire ritual playstyle. So I wanted to utilize all of them into one deck, and this is what I've come up with for a ritual fairy playstyle using a small fairy engine. I didn't really want to rely on the Drytrons for this deck. I wanted to go with as pure of a Herald deck as I could. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we will go ahead and start off with the actual Herald ritual monsters. For the Heralds, we are running 3 of the original monster, which is Herald of Perfection, with this card being your main option for negation in the deck. You can ritual summon this card with Dawn of the Herald. During either player's turn, when your opponent activates a spell card, trap card, or monster effect, you can send one fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. So just even having one of the other Herald monsters in our hand can help for the negation, just having Herald of Perfection on the field, because then you have your negate set up right here with a more defensive monster to use for that playstyle. I'll run 3 copies of this card. It's easily searchable with a good number of the other spells we run in the deck and some of the other fairy support we run, but still having this card readily available because Dawn of the Herald requires that you do activate and ritual summon contributing monsters that exactly equal level 6, so having multiple copies of you to use of Herald of Perfection just helps with that playstyle. I also run 2 of its evolved form, Herald of Ultimateness. With this card, you can ritual summon this card with Oracle of the Herald, which is a different spell card that we have here. And with this card, it must be ritual summoned when your opponent would special summon a monster or monsters or activate a spell or trap or a card effect. You can send one fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard, negate the special summon or activation if you do destroy that card. So Herald of Perfection, with this card having more of a stop for a monster effect, won't stop the special summon. You do have that option with your Herald of Ultimateness. So this card also, you have to tribute out monsters that are level 12 or more. With this card being your main go-to boss monster, you can use the incantation line, which I'm also running for helping this setup of just the needed monsters for you to tribute out with your Oracle, the Herald spell card. And then for added backup for the ritual play, I also run 2 Cyber Angel Benton and 1 Cyber Angel Idotin. Searchable also with our Ritual Sanctuary field spell, which we run, and being able to either search out more of the light fairy option when Cyber Angel Benton is used for the tribute, or even with Idotin to when it's ritual summon, you can add 1 ritual spell from your deck or graveyard to your hand. For that search power, we are utilizing the different spell search for our Machine Angel Ritual as an additional search to use for this as an added backup ritual play, but being level 6 monsters, they're also just easy to use for tributing out to get your Herald of Perfection onto the field. Now for more of the actual Herald lineup, I do run 3 Herald of the Orange Light. If you don't have the ritual play ready to go, you can still use Cyber Angel Benton or any of the other fairy monsters as added send cost for your Herald main deck monsters that we run, with Herald of the Orange Light being able to send this and one other fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation of an effect monster that your opponent controls, and destroy it. So this is just an added option, even going second against your opponent, to send it to the graveyard to stop that monster effect. For added negation options, I am also running 3 Herald of Green Light. When your opponent activates a spell card, quick effect, you can send this card and one other fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation if you destroy it. And with the last one being Herald of the Purple Light, which stops trap effects. With this one not seeing as much play, you can even adjust this card's number with some of the other monsters I run in the main deck, depending on your preference. This one stops traps, but even with this specification, if you have it with one of the other Herald monsters, you can just send it as the cost for these cards. Having a negation for a trap, spell, or monster means that you can stop a good majority of the plays your opponent may try to go for if you know what they're trying to use in their deck. And then for more of the ritual setup, I run 3 Incantation Candle, 3 Talismandra, 1 Pencil Plume, and 1 Bookstone. For the graveyard recycle with Pencil Plume and Bookstone, and being able to have the deck search for either your spell or monster with Candle or Talismandra. The big plays with these monsters come in the form of you just need the higher levels for your Herald of Ultimateness, and you are locked out of the extra deck with these cards, but you can at least get those monsters ready on the field to use for the tribute for your Herald of the Ultimateness monster on the field. And then for the last ritual support that we run in the main deck, I run 2 Manju of the 10,000 Hands. When it's normal or flip summon, you can add 1 ritual monster or ritual spell from your deck to your hand. More search power depending on what play you want to go for in the deck. If you want to run 3 copies of Manju, you can always drop the number of Herald of Purple Lights down to 2. Being a trap, you'll probably see less play with this card, and put in a 3rd copy of Manju of the 10,000 Hands. And being a fairy monster, Manju can also be sent for the different Herald cards, whether it's green light, orange light, or even our ritual monsters. And that's it for the main deck monsters. Moving on now to the spells. I run 2 Dawn of the Herald and 1 Oracle of the Herald. Dawn of the Herald is used to summon out your Herald of Perfection, and Oracle of Herald is used to summon Herald of Ultimateness. You must also tribute monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal 12 or more for Oracle of the Herald. Dawn of the Herald has to be the exact number, which we do run a good number of level 6 monsters. Talismandra is even just a level 6 monster on its own, so that can be used just for the tribute cost for your Herald of Perfection. And from the graveyard, when a Herald Perfection is ritual summoned by a card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard, select one of the monsters tributed for the ritual, return to your hand from your graveyard. Being able to add back Benton if it was part of the tribute cost is great, because then you just have an additional card to use for the discard for your Perfection for that negation to use against your opponents. And I also run the 1 Machine Angel Ritual. It's just another ritual search for your use of being able to ritual summon out your Idotin or Benton for either recycling the spell back to your hand or just getting out that monster to use. For more ritual search, I also run 3 Ritual Sanctuary. A field spell, you can discard 1 spell card to add 1 light ritual monster or ritual spell from your deck to your hand. You can shuffle any number of spells from your graveyard into the deck to target 1 light fairy monster in your graveyard whose level equals the number of cards shuffled into the deck and special summon it. This gives you more of a play for you to special summon out your other heralds that you discarded to the graveyard for their own negation effects, and then use them to get out your link monster option, which is Herald of Mirage Light, needing 2 monsters with the same type and attribute. And this card is great for just searching out the needed cards, whether it be the light ritual monster you want to go for, or the specific spell card for them. For more search power, I also run 2 extra Foolish Burial. If you have Diviner of Herald, you can always take this card out for that fairy monster in the deck. But just being able to send your Herald of the Arclight to the graveyard to get a ritual monster or spell card search is why I like running this card in the deck. You really don't use your life points for much else in the deck, so a great way to make use of the Synchro Monster in the extra deck for its search power. And I also run 1 Terraforming for the search of your much needed search power, Ritual Sanctuary. Being able to have multiples of this card in your hand is just an added bonus because you can use it for the discard spell cost of searching out what you need. And then lastly, for the main deck, just 3 Preparation of Rites, another way to recycle the spell cards for your rituals in the graveyard back to your hand, while also being able to search a level 7 or lower ritual monster from your deck to your hand, being able to search out any of the Cyber Angel line or your Herald of Perfections. You can't search Herald of Ultimateness, sadly, but if you wanted to run pre-preparation of rites, having the specific names for it can come down to that additional search if you wish to go for that search instead. You can always take out the Manju of the 10,000 Hands for the pre-preparation of rites search spell. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck for the extra Foolish Burial goods option of being able to send with your extra Foolish Burial. You couldn't use this card with your Herald of the Arclight when it's sent to the graveyard. There's really no way to synchro summon this card out in the deck. It's mostly used for the sent to the graveyard play to then add a ritual monster or ritual spell from your deck to your hand, just giving you more of those resources depending on what you want to add. And for the Link monsters, I run the 1 Herald of Mirage Lights, needing 2 monsters with the same type and attribute. You can summon out. Your best way to do so would be with your spell, the Ritual Sanctuary, being able to summon back the level 2 monsters quite easily, because if you use the discard cost for Ritual Sanctuary, you can then have the ritual spell that you use to ritual summon out your monster also in the graveyard, shuffled back, and then special summon that level 2 monster that you set up in your graveyard by its own negation, giving you that monster and then just an additional normal summon of another fairy light monster on the field to summon this card out. And when a spell, trap, or effect is activated, you can send 1 fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation. And if you do, destroy it. And if this card in your possession is sent to your graveyard by an opponent's card, you can add up to 2 ritual monsters monsters and or ritual spells with different names from your graveyard to your hand, giving you that recycle for some of the potential resources that were used to summon out this card to begin with. Because a lot of times if you have that one fairy monster, you can, even if you don't have the negation set up and ready to go, use the ritual monster as that other needed play for you to summon out this link monster. And then for the rest of the extra deck lineup, I run 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Lena the Light Charmer, 2 Hip Hoshinengen, being a fairy type monster makes Hip Hoshinengen all the better, 1 Underclock Taker, along with 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Barricade Board Blocker, 1 Salmon Great Almirage, 1 Topologic Zerberos, 1 Mekk-Knight Avramax, and 1 Apollosa for the Link 4 plays. If you have Nightmare Unicorn, you can always swap it out for one of the Link 4 options also. And then as for some of the go-to plays, the Ritual Sanctuary definitely does help for setting up a lot of the plays I mentioned with the Herald monsters, being able to discard 1 spell card to add 1 light ritual monster. So if you discard one of your, let's say, additional Ritual Sanctuaries you may have opened up with in your hand, you can add the light ritual monster or the ritual spell to your hand for the provided search. Cyber Angel Benton, being able to have more search power off this card is always a good one to go for. And then if you have the ritual of choice you want to go for in your hand, either you search it out for your Preparation of Rites. If you do and you discarded one of the ritual cards to the graveyard, that could be added back with Preparation of Rites to use, setting up another card in your hand. So let's say that scenario happened where you discarded the ritual card and then you activate your Preparation of Rites, searching out the additional monster after you searched out the Benton, getting the Herald of Perfection to your hand, adding back the ritual play, having these 3 cards in your hand and the Preparation of Rites in your graveyard. You then activate Dawn of the Herald to then tribute out the Benton to then summon out your Herald of Perfection, which it having higher defense, you want to make sure you summon in defense mode, giving you these 2 cards in the graveyard for you to use, and then being able to also have the light fairy monster in your graveyard. For the shuffle back, you'll use Benton's effect to search out the Herald of Choice, which then you can either go for whichever one of the 3 you need. For the negation, most of the time with monsters being more common, you'll add the Herald of Orange Light off of the Benton search. You can even use the Dawn of the Herald in the graveyard to add back the Cyber Angel Benton by banishing this card also, giving you the 2 monsters needed in your hand for the additional 2 negations for Herald of Perfection or your Herald of the Orange Light. If your opponent were to kaiju your Herald of Perfection, you still have this negation in your hand to use. And with it, you'll just need the 1 additional spell search if you didn't go for the play of your Benton and kept it in the graveyard along with the 2 spells. You can at least have the hand negation to send to the graveyard for your Perfection, setting up the additional monster in your graveyard, which you can then shuffle back the 2 spells to special summon onto the field along with that resource if you don't have any other ones in your hand, giving you at least the Herald of Mirage Lights to summon out with the Link play, which can also be used for the additional search of any of the fairy monsters when it's sent to the graveyard by your opponent to add back to your hand. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. I've been wanting to make a Herald deck for a while. Ever since I saw that they had a Link monster from Dual Overload, I've always wanted to make a deck profile for them, and glad I was finally able to. And I hope you all enjoyed the video as well. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira Twig out.